talking of the metaverse, I'm going to be basically taking the next Fireside chat, and I'm going to talk to Morgan Tucker of Roblox, who I believe is with us now, on the subject of designing in the metaverse. Now, this is a Fireside chat, so we haven't got long, and there's again another one where we've got so many things to talk about. Roblox doing some amazing work here. Morgan, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
Great, I can, loud and clear.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining us again. You've been on the Beyond Games track before, I think, and it's fantastic to have you back. Roblox just doing some absolutely incredible things, and I've got a whole bunch of questions to ask you. But to sort of set the scene for everyone here, there's been fantastic opportunities recently to watch live concerts inside Roblox, in addition to all the other incredible sort of building work that goes on in the user generated games and things that you can play there. So we're going to be talking about some of those concerts and also some of the other amazing design opportunities in the metaverse. Morgan, you're the senior director of product at Roblox. And I know, just before I give you a chance to introduce yourself a little bit, you just did an interview for PocketGamer.biz, which I thought was fascinating. And you described Roblox as a human co-experience platform, which I absolutely love. And I'm not going to use that phrase the entire time because that's absolutely how I think we need to think of some of these things. So yeah, can I just maybe just take a minute to introduce yourself and your role and speak a little bit about your background, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been at Roblox for about 4 years, but really the last decade I've spent sort of in the metaverse arena. It fascinates me, this idea of really moving human experience and communication to the next level. So at Roblox, I run the social product group, which kind of encompasses not only the social networking pieces and the communication pieces, but also a lot of these cutting edge kind of metaverse forward experiences that we'll be talking about today.
That's great. I think maybe also, before I launch into some of my questions specifically about those experiences that you created, can you just maybe give us a bit of an insight into where Roblox is at the moment? I mean, I think we all kind of know about Roblox. I mean, we've all maybe even experienced it. But importantly, I guess that right now, perhaps some people who are watching today maybe think of it as a kind of a kids platform still. But is that, who is the community? Can you tell us a little bit about where Roblox is right now?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people hear about Roblox, through their kids or maybe kids that they know. But the reality is that the audience is actually a lot larger than that. More than 50% of the audience, actually 13 and up at this point. So it's been growing rapidly, I think, as we're all aware. But I think that the big thing with Roblox is it's not just a gaming platform. It's a lot bigger than that. And I think the things we're going to talk about today sort of highlight the opportunities there to focus in on, deep interactivity, not necessarily things that are, competitive or like gaming oriented, but more just doing things with people you care about and really experiencing things that you couldn't do in the real world.
That's great. And I think those phrases that you used there, like, the co-experience platform we said before, and about interactivity that you just said there, we're going to come on to that a lot. So I want to sort of bring to everyone's attention the fact that you guys had an amazing virtual concert experience. The 21 Pilots duo, they broke new records, I think. It was, and that was only quite recent, right? Maybe only like a week or so ago, something like that.
That's right. Yeah, we had a coming off a hot couple of weeks here.
So look, I want to ask you some questions, but first of all, I believe you've got a little bit of footage, maybe like a minute of footage just to set the scene, like a little bit of a B-roll tease.
Yeah.
If it's all right with you, shall we play that, and then maybe you can talk us through some of that, and that might, you can tell us what we're seeing, and that, that inspires us. Yeah, great. So I think our stage manager Catherine can maybe throw that up, just throw the VT up there of the 21 Pilots, and just talk us through what we're seeing.
Yeah, so again, when we're creating these experiences, the player is actually the center and focal point of a lot of this. And so here you can see that we incorporate the player and their kind of uniqueness into the composition. In this stage in particular, everybody is actually bringing light and life to this kind of otherwise drab existence. So they're bombarding the set with paint. Here, this is one of the coolest, most unique elements of this concert. People were able to choose the order in which they experience things. You can see here that the scale and scope of the stages gets larger as you move through the experience. Things continue to open up. Here is another good opportunity to highlight the player themselves. So on this stage, if you're able to stay at the top the longest, and you get projected onto the screen in the background. Everybody loves to see themselves up next to the band. So yeah, so I think that's like a good overview, like of sort of certain elements of the concert.
That's amazing, and I think just seeing that there from my perspective, it almost felt more like you as a member of the community were kind of being able to participate in like a stage musical more than just sort of experiencing passively a concert, something like that.
Yes, exactly.
So I love that. So let me ask you some questions about that. Let's give us some food for thought there. Just some of the practical stuff first, if I may, because you're working there on the product, on the design of it. You've got two performers there, and I think the last time I spoke to you, you'd just done kind of a concert with Lil Nas X, who of course is one artist. How much more complicated was this compared to that? I mean, what's the experience like of kind of digitizing those guys and bringing them into your shared space?
Yeah, it's super interesting. Definitely complexity goes up with more participants. We got a little bit of a respite though, because the drummer is basically in a fixed position the whole time.
Right.
But while we were sort of orchestrating the performance against a green screen, we actually were hoping to get the most kind of animated performance out of the drummer himself. He's actually like a really unique guy in that way. He's got a great style that really translated and came through in the motion capture session. And then beyond that, working with Tyler, the lead singer, to get him to visualize, okay, this is what you're seeing in front of you. The players are actually about calf or knee high at this point, so you got to make sure you're looking down, not up. And how can you interact with the audience? How can you beckon them closer? Lots of great moments where the scale and scope of the artist is taken into consideration against the users themselves. Really fun, definitely complicated, and the interesting thing here is it's not always as pre-fixed as you might think. Like as we were working through things on set, it became clear that like, this wasn't quite going to work out the way we had storyboarded, or there were opportunities for happy accidents that we took advantage of and were able to manipulate the digital set afterward.
How closely involved were the musicians and 21 Pilots with the artistic decisions? Did they put themselves entirely in your virtual hands, or did they have some kind of involvement in the, if you like, the sort of virtual set design, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so they were actually super involved. True artists in that sense of the word. This band actually has a really great deep narrative and all sorts of kind of hidden messages in their records, and so they wanted to make sure that came through. And they actually were the ones that wanted to not only make sure that this was an authentic 21 Pilots experience, but felt authentic to the Roblox platform and the players there. So we worked very, very closely with them, lots of back and forth, and it was a really rewarding experience in that way.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And in fact, from the player's perspective, the experience was interactive, and we saw a little bit of that in the footage that you showed there. Not just kind of obviously having an avatar there in the virtual environment, but also having some say in the set list by the sound of things. Looks like a voting mechanism. I mean, how important is that to you for this kind of virtual concert? How do you encourage it?
I think it's incredibly important because if we're just sort of replicating reality and concerts, there's always a great live energy there, but they're fairly passive. You're absorbing, the content that's coming at you. We have an opportunity to allow the players to have a sense of agency and really affect the outcome of what's happening in the room, making each experience bespoke. Yeah. And I think that's super important. So that interactivity is critical and is foundational to all of the design work we're doing.
I love a point that you just made there about making the experience different from real life. I know maybe perhaps for someone of my generation, you think, oh, there's no way it could be better than being there in person, the smell of the crowd kind of thing. But actually, I guess from a design point of view, experiences like this can be better than real life. I mean, I'm just thinking back to what you told me before about Lil Nas X, just kind of the scale and making for visibility and so on. But as a kind of designer, how do you go about building an experience which is kind of distinct and powerful and just has stuff that makes it better than life?
Yeah, so I think the opportunity here, I think, as a storyteller, is to really key into the emotionality of the music itself, or what are they trying to convey, And we're super lucky with 21 Pilots. Like there is a deep emotional perspective here. It's a lot about like mental health and I you know, those things I hold near and dear. And so I was able to sort of absorb myself in their ethos and kind of project that into virtual space. But as far as trying to make it better than the real world, some of our players' tweets after the event actually summarizes quite well. They're like, you know, there are two sort of camps. One, you know, I'm not able to go to see them in person. Either I'm too young or they're not playing anywhere near me. And this is the only way I can see them. And I'm so excited that I can participate.
Yeah.
And then another track where people are saying like, this is the closest I'm ever going to get to these performers. And these are like my idols. And it's very special to be able to be that close to them, to feel like you're a part of the music and the performance. And, you know, people talking about like, oh, I cried, it was amazing. And so I think we accomplished something really great there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that maybe during the pandemic, we all had a little bit of a taste of having to kind of deal with, you know, connect with things remotely. But actually, there's always going to be people who can't travel to an event. Maybe it's in a different country. Maybe they just have accessibility issues that are there. Or as you say, even at an event, you can spend a fortune on a ticket to go to a stadium and never get that close to your favorite performer, right? So you know, that's really interesting. And in fact, from that note, I'd like to kind of broaden it out a little bit. I'm sure there's more stuff about 21 Pilots that we'll pull into this, but just kind of more of a sort of general theory about designing for the metaverse. The metaverse being a very popular term at the moment, but I think I'd love to hear how you and Roblox define the metaverse. That's a term I think you probably do use, but what is it that we're talking about here for those who have just joined the track? What's the metaverse and how do you see it?
Yeah, so I think like Roblox's definition of the metaverse might differ from others in that we don't portend to be the metaverse. We're not trying to build the metaverse. We believe that the metaverse is bigger than any one company. Instead, we're sort of positioning ourselves as a metaverse platform. Right. And really what that means is, you know, how can we get as many people as possible creating these really unique experiences that are inherently social, that people can visit, that are persistent and able to kind of build and grow in size and scale over time. So an interconnected kind of universe of worlds is the way we envision this.
And in terms of like building experiences for the metaverse, more generally, obviously the 21 Pilots one is the one we just saw there, but there's other concerts that you've done, but also other just experiences and playing together and communicating. What are the key principles of the metaverse for you? I know you've built some referencing experiences you yourself in some places inside Roblox. What are the important design aspects that you're keen to showcase?
Yeah, so I think, you know, first and foremost, really giving the audience agency and autonomy. This is a key principle in everything we design. Again, we go back to what we were talking about earlier. If it's just a facsimile of real world, it's not super interesting. But if you feel like as a player you can affect what's happening around you, you can bring your friends into this, and it becomes something where you can shape and mold the experience yourself. That's pretty critical. We have a few other kind of principles that drive this. No limitations, I think, is like a big one. Don't let yourself get bogged down. Again, it's easy to think like, oh, we're going to do a concert, so there's got to be a stage and it's got to have scaffolding, and it's like, no, just blow that all away and right. Really imagine if technology, if the rules of reality were not an imposition, how might we convey again this emotion and impact. And then actually that brings me to the third piece, which is emotion is actually the single biggest piece of this. Like we can continue to improve the fidelity of these experiences and the depth, but at the end of the day, we want people to feel the experience. We want them to feel connected and close to the artist and what the artist was trying to say. And so from the outset, that's actually kind of really one of the bedrock principles of the design process, is making sure that emotion pokes through at every moment. We look for opportunities for these big moments. For example, one of 21 Pilots' songs is really, it's called Car Radio. It's sort of an introspective piece about, feeling like alone and isolated, and the players are sort of running along this piano wire in this giant stage. They're able to get close to the performer and really see the emotion that he's putting into the performance, its face, in a way that you wouldn't in a live performance. And then it all crescendos in this big moment where everybody is jumping and kind of moshing together with the artist in a way that really hits people, and that's really exciting. And then lastly, I think this is, just like a kind of a design thing. It's never let the technology dictate the vision.
Right.
Always ensure that that creativity is really the foundation, and the technologies are just to support it. And so in this experience, it was really great because once we had sort of set out to say, hey, we want to let the players choose what stage they go to next, and change the outcome of certain parts of each song. We built sort of a concert framework behind the scenes that stitched it all together. And this is something that we actually intend on releasing to our community of developers at some point in the future. So I think that creativity driving the technology, not the other way around, is a big thing.
That's amazing. I mean, the kind of the multiple principles that you suggested there were great. And in fact, it just made me think. I just wrote down on my pad there, when the first thing you said about not immediately trying to replicate the exact experience of being kind of constrained by what we know from the real world. The word skeuomorphism popped into my head. Do you remember, that thing about trying to artificially recreate things, and how that's so unnecessary, and just kind of free yourself from that. And I think that's kind of fascinating, absolutely fascinating. As I was saying to someone the other day, the fact that for some reason the road symbol for a camera is like some 19th century camera. It enrages me. I don't know why that has to be that. Why is it like that? But yeah, so that's fascinating. And in fact, so talking about kind of experiences then, and some of the other experiences, we've seen some kind of great kind of shared experiences in the space that I know you guys have been associated with. And I just want to throw some off. I don't know how much you personally were associated with them, but there was the kind of Gucci Garden experience, and there was an In the Heights block party. I understand there was like a virtual flash mob where people learning to dance inside Roblox and so on. I mean, I don't know how closely you've been following all those things, how closely you personally worked on them, but can you speak to us a little bit about the challenges and opportunities of kind of creating experiences like that these days?
Yeah, so my team was responsible for all of those outlined. And I think we can talk about those two experiences separately, because they're really great kind of examples of two different industries and two different schools of thought. So with Gucci, again, still utilizing some of the principles we talked about. Ultimately, we need to understand the vision of what the brand is, like what's the artistry, and how are they trying to convey that. And so when we started talking with them, they were going to have this in-person Gucci Garden experience. It was like a cool video installation celebrating 100 years of design. And so we're thinking, okay, well, how can we build off of that and expand upon these kind of ethos? And we conceived of this concept that everybody starts as this sort of neutral mannequin, blank mannequin. Everybody is the same. And as they move through the exhibits and the spaces, the different patterns and textures impart themselves onto you in very unique ways. So you all start the same, but you end your journey as a unique individual based on your experience. And then your mannequin is kind of put up for display, and everybody can kind of see the different artistry. So really kind of an abstract concept made, manifest in virtual form. And I think that's really unique, because we could have just done something basic and said, hey, here's the Gucci shopping experience. But I think that would have done a disservice to really the creative vision behind that brand. And then when it came to In the Heights, similarly, we start with that fundamental premise, like what are they trying to say with this movie and this film? And it's all about community and individual strength and pulling each other up together. And so we thought about, okay, well, what types of experiences are going to convey that in digital space? And wouldn't it be amazing if you could learn dance moves and all perform the world's largest digital flash mob together simultaneously? And so a lot of the experiences that happened within that space had that, again, like as a fundamental starting point, whether it was experiencing a blackout and everybody is shooting off fireworks and using glow sticks together simultaneously, or this big dance party where if you pull off the moves together, it feels really great, like you've accomplished something.
Yeah,
as a unit.
yeah, exactly. Coming together to have that shared experience. Absolutely. I've just clocked the time, and we've got a few minutes left. I've got a few more questions, but I just remembered that I need to let everyone know they can ask you questions as well. So, folks, if you're watching this, do drop your questions into the Q&A box because we've got some time to put those to Morgan for sure. So on that note, what you were just saying there, I think particularly with reference to the kind of you mentioned the mannequins from the Gucci garden, but also the way people can kind of personalize themselves and things. The last panel that we just had on here on the stage was about character design. What's the importance of character for the overall kind of metaverse experience, in your opinion?
It's incredibly important, but I think from my perspective, character is again a direct result of the player's choices, and so. I used to use this term in my last job, limited resonance. Like, you want the player to feel very connected to the avatar or character that they've created. I've witnessed people who get so attached to their avatars that when somebody maybe encroaches on their personal space, they physically recoil in their seat because they're like, I didn't tell them they could touch me. Like, get out of here. Right. And that's a great moment and something to really kind of register and work off of. So I think allowing the player to really craft the character themselves and impart their own vision of themselves is really important.
That's interesting. You just, maybe just we could have a whole afternoon talking about people's characters in the metaverse as extensions of themselves and how they feel about them, I'm sure. I see we've got a couple of questions coming in, but I'm going to just ask you a bit of a thorny one before I get to talk a little bit more about technology a little bit, perhaps. But as sort of developers start making experiences for the metaverse, are there any red flags that you would warn them about? What are the pitfalls for designing for the metaverse?
Yeah, I don't know that there are pitfalls as much as there is a complexity in creating an authentic experience that allows the user to have this agency. And so as a designer, it's always harder to think about giving people the tools versus building the whole thing and forcing them through like a railed experience.
Right.
And so how can you allow your thought process to be open-ended enough that the players actually can fill in the space themselves? It's a really challenging but really rewarding. Every single one of these experiences we've released, players surprise us with what they discovered we didn't even realize was going to happen in the stage, and they're super excited, and it's amazing to watch that in real time.
We've got a couple of questions, but before I get them, I just want to ask you about something that I heard about the other day that you're working on for Roblox. Am I right in thinking that you're developing kind of spatial voice tech at the moment?
Yeah.
I don't know how much you're able to say about where you are in that, but what's the plan behind that? And can you just bring us up to date on what you're working on there?
Yeah, so spatial voice is voice chat, but implemented in a more naturalistic manner. So it's exactly what it sounds like. Your avatar is the source of the audio, which means as you congregate as a group, if you come closer or further away from the conversation, it kind of attenuates just like it would in the real world. And you can imagine in the future, we've got materials that block or reflect the sound as well. And so where we are with this, we've released it to developers on sort of a limited basis. We're kind of slowly rolling it out, but any Roblox developer can actually experiment with this in studio today as of a week or so ago. Like I said, we've been very busy on the team, and we've already seen incredible things come from this. So we had built sort of a reference piece of content that was more about like, hey, like, let's get together with your friends and chat and whatnot and set up the social space to do so. But we've seen developers take that voice input and imagine things like, scream at your computer to make your character jump. Right, and you can imagine how hilarious this is when you have multitudes of people in the same level and you're all kind of trying to get through things in a kind of platformy perspective. We've also seen somebody import this spatial tech into their existing experience, which is like a roller coaster tycoon type of thing. And it's super funny to watch. It's like you're on the ground watching people on the roller coaster, and as they go by, they scream and the movement. There's a great kind of Doppler effect thing going on there. So yeah, it's early days, but we've already had really great uptake from the developer community. And again, just as we were talking about earlier, I'm really excited to see what the community at large does with this.
That's amazing. That's great, and perfect timing. We've got maybe a couple of minutes left, and we've got sort of 2 or 3 questions. So I'll leap in here. I'm going to take the question that Chris just popped in. Hello, Chris. Thanks for watching. So Chris asks a question, perhaps inevitable with all the hype around at the moment, about NFTs. We've seen quite a lot of news about player-owned economies at the moment and the related tech. Just generally, is that an essential part of the metaverse going forward? But also, does Roblox have any thoughts about or approaches about NFTs at present?
Yeah, so I think probably an analog to NFTs in the Roblox universe is this concept of limited items, and actually they made an appearance in the Gucci Garden experience.
Right.
Really fascinating to see how this played out. Gucci released limited numbers of these items, and then they were resold, on the secondary market within this economy. In some cases, for more than the physical purse would have gone for.
Right. Wow.
Really fascinating. And as we continue to open up the UGC platform for accessory and clothing creation, you can imagine all sorts of creators taking advantage of this. So yes, I think this is really important. That notion of scarcity in a digital form, I think, is critical to impart value.
Wow, that's interesting. Let me grab a question from the top here. What's the next big milestone in the advent of the metaverse? What tech or development or game feature do we need to push things forward?
Yeah, I think right now, I like where I think we're trying to move, and I see other people trying to move, is to capture the spirit and life of the user and impart it into the avatar itself. I really think that that's a big piece that's missing here. If we imagine that we're going to have this conference in the metaverse in the future, we need to be able to have the same gestures and facial movement that we would be giving, because these are all really important cues to human understanding. And so I think there needs to be a lot more development down that path. And I see a lot of people kind of working on improving avatar systems and riffing on inputs, whether that's camera or voice or things like that.
And finally, let me just take this final question, since we've only got one left. A user has asked, you mentioned that Roblox aren't trying to define or control the metaverse. Can you foresee a future in which characters and elements from other worlds, let's say Fortnite, could cross over into the world of Roblox? I guess it's a question about, metaverses crossing over with each other.
Yeah, I think, without being definitive, I think we're open to interoperability. I think, we believe that the metaverse is like the next evolution of the internet. And so you could certainly imagine things like that happening.
Great. I think one of the interesting ideas behind NFTs is that those items can be, interchangeable, and that's one of the things those companies are working on. Morgan, that's amazing. You know what? We've reached time. It's been perfect timing. We've covered, the hot topics. There's loads more we could speak about, though. Doing some really interesting things. So I'm going to encourage all our audience to go and check out Roblox. And in the meantime, I'm going to give a big round of applause to you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. And thank you very much for talking us through the 21 Pilots experience and the other things you've been working on. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me back, Dave. This is great.
See you again, I hope.